Hello, everybody. This is Tommy Lee Hayes Brown with Rito Recognition. Today, I'm excited to present to you my friend, Charles Scherbaum, Dr. Charles Scherbaum. He's our Chief Analytics Officer here at Rito. He's an industry expert in analytics, talent assessment, performance management, and employee research. For over 12 years, Charles has overseen numerous research and analytic initiatives that have played a significant role in the success of a number of Fortune 500 companies. And as part of the Rito team, since 2007, he consults with Rito and our clients on predictive analytics and workforce metrics. Charles received his PhD in industrial and organizational psychology from The Ohio University and is an associate professor of psychology at Baruch College. Among a wide variety of courses he's taught are HR analytics, performance management, personnel psychology, and psychometrics. Charles is a writer. He's been published in a ton of industry periodicals, for example, personnel psychology, organizational research methods, human resource management review, and the Journal of Business and Psychology. One of the great things about Charles is he's able to take a very, very complicated subject and drill it down in a language and in a method that we all can easily understand. So he adds great, great value to our team, to our clients, and hopefully to you. Just a couple of housekeeping things. I will be collecting questions as Charles presents. So there's a little button there to ask a question. Go ahead and press that. That'll come directly to me. And we'll end the presentation today with your questions. If after the webinar you still have questions, feel free to contact Charles. We'll have his contact information there, and we'll also have my contact information. If you have any questions or comments or would like to reach out to Rito and have us help you out with help you execute your recognition strategy. So without further ado, let me turn it over to my friend Charles.
Great. Thanks so much, Tommy Lee, and thanks to all of you for being with us today. I'm really excited today to talk to you a little bit about how one can build a strong culture through recognition and engagement training for your managers. Obviously, culture is something that all companies think about. We know that it is truly one of the few competitive advantages and key differentiators for organizations. Your products, your processes, your branding, your marketing, those can all be copied time and time again. And usually somebody can do it quite quickly after you've invented something new, but culture is very, very hard to imitate. So it's one of the few things that truly is a competitive advantage for organizations and can be sustained over long periods of time. When we think about everyone right now is working on their millennial strategies and thinking about how to be an employer of choice and how to attract all sorts of top talent, that culture really is at the heart of that. And we know that culture is a key part of the employee's experience. Employee's experience is a key part of becoming an employer of choice. And an employer of choice is really what we need to be in order if we want to attract and retain top talent, particularly as we think about there is going to be talent shortages. I guess there is already in many industries and in many countries, but those are increasingly becoming apparent in many, many places. So, culture is something that really is a critical part of what we do. Now, when we think about culture and how do we build it, how do we create it, how do we really make a strong and positive culture, managers really are at the center of everything. Anyone who's looked at research by Gallup or other providers of culture and engagement surveys, or you've done key driver analyses on your own employee opinion survey, know that some of the key drivers year after year are the managers and leaders of the organization. I mean, they really are the ones who day in and day out bring our cultures to life and create the experiences for the employees. If you look at theories of organizational culture, every single one of them has managers and leaders really as the ones who create, maintain, and reinforce culture. So they're really, really central to helping us achieve this goal of a strong culture to attract talent. The problem is that we oftentimes don't equip managers with the skills and tools that they need to really help institute and build a strong culture. Now that's the bad news, but the good news is it doesn't have to be that way, and that we can prepare managers and develop them to help take on this role that we need them to play in our organizations. This is an area we struggle, and we struggle for a number of reasons. First of all, that the training we give managers is often so abstract that they really don't understand how to translate what they've learned from this training about how to build strong cultures into daily behaviors and routines that they can use when interacting with their teams, their employees, and others in the organization. Second of all, it's so generic that it kind of has a one-size-fits-all approach, which is true of much training. But in this case, it really doesn't target the types of things that any given manager needs to do. We can think about a lot of things that might be important for managers to do to build strong cultures. Let's take an example of feedback. And often in kind of combination with these two is that this type of training is not behaviorally focused. So again, it is difficult for managers to translate the content they are learning in the training about how to build strong cultures and engaging their teams into things that they're actually supposed to do when interacting with their employees. Now, what we need to do is we need to make things concrete. We need to personalize them to the individual needs of the manager, and we need to make them behaviorally focused. And if we do that, we can have a lot of success in helping managers develop the skills they need in terms of building strong cultures. And I want to talk a little bit about the approach that we've taken, and really what we call it is personalized managerial development. And it's really based on a couple principles, and we're going to share a case study with you of one specific way in which we've developed a system that does this and implemented it at one of our clients and how it works. But I want to tell you a little bit about the principles of it. It's personalized, which means it's assessment driven, and we won't waste time with the things they're already good at, or we won't waste time on things that they might need to develop, but they aren't really essential. And so we need to start with some form of assessment to know where those needs are. I think a medical analogy is really useful here is that the doctor doesn't just immediately prescribe you medication. The doctor will first do an assessment and diagnostic test to understand what it is you need, and then only prescribe you what you need, nothing more, nothing less. So our system follows the same model. So first we assess individuals, okay? And then based on that assessment, we're going to prescribe behaviorally focused learning experiences. And lastly, that we need to evaluate if it's working. I mean, that's really the million-dollar question. When we think about learning and development, did it promote learning? Did it promote behavioral change back on the job? And did those behavioral changes produce differential results for the individual, for the groups, and for the organization? And so when we think about this personalized assessment-driven managerial development, for us, these are really the four key elements that we've implemented in our system. We'll share with you a little bit of how that looks. Distance learning is really a platform that implements much of what we've already talked about. It first starts with the skills assessment, where we identify managers' recognition skills and developmental needs. For those of you on the webinar today, if you're interested in completing a recognition skills assessment and receiving a feedback report on some of your top recognition skills, as well as some developmental areas, I would be happy to provide you a link to do that. I'll put my contact information up at the end, and you can email me or Tommy Lee, and we'll provide you a link to do that. But it'll give you some insights. So if you've done a DISC or an MBTI or Hogan before, it'll give you some of the same types, same kind of general class of information about where are the areas you can leverage, as well as where are the areas that you can build your skills further. Once managers have completed the recognition skills assessment, they are prescribed very specific learning and development opportunities. Now, this specific system was implemented in kind of online microlearning, where we gave them very specific, short behavioral learning and development opportunities that were focused around one or two specific behaviors that we know lead to more positive recognition experiences and help build a strong culture in an organization. So once the managers completed the assessment, they are prescribed very specific learning modules that are prioritized based on their developmental need, as well as the opportunity that these skills can make a difference in the employee experience. So they're prioritized both on need and importance. Managers work through their prescribed learning modules. We have a variety of post-learning checks to make sure that people actually are learning something, that they're actually implementing it back on the job, and that it's actually making a difference in terms of the employee experience and organizational performance. And it's a very positive feedback loop where managers will complete a module, successfully implement it, and then move on to the next. So that way they have time to consolidate their learning and really make it part of their daily routine. One of the first things we looked at is understanding how managers who are going through these types of training were helping create work teams and environments and experiences that were more positive inside their teams. And we looked at this in a couple ways. First of all, we looked at people who did nothing. So this is essentially our baseline, our reference, or our control group. So these are the people that if we just let things take their natural course, this is what we'd expect to see in terms of some of the employee opinion results. We looked at people who started the process but never finished it. So essentially they started it and then they got busy and abandoned ship. And so they got a little bit of the learning, but they didn't get all that they needed. And we looked at people who completed the entire set of prescriptions. So this is much like when you go to the doctor, they prescribe you medication. There are people that never take it. There are people that start the medication but then stop it before it's completed its full cycle. And there are those that take all of the medication that they're supposed to take. And what we see here is that when managers complete their entire learning journey, we see much more positive employee experiences. And again, if you look at the numbers on the screen, these are incredibly strong performance, even for those that did nothing. And certainly we know that there comes a point, a law of diminishing returns, when we're looking at organizational development opportunities to improve employee experience, that when we're down in the 50s, 60s, 70s, there's lots of easy stuff that we can do. Once we start hitting the point of the mid 80s into the 90s, the curve starts to bend and all the easy stuff is done. And now we have a lot of the very challenging work of trying to develop more positive engagement experiences and employee experiences. And so managers doing this learning are able to create stronger teams that work well together, that have greater degrees of trust, and that they feel they receive more support for doing their job well. We think about some further aspects of performance management and recognition, that when managers complete the learning, they find they are much better able to give recognition that's meaningful and also more meaningful performance feedback. So managers who are completing all of these trainings are really better able to have these types of interactions that are critical for creating a positive employee experience. This one organization, we also had an independent index of employee experience that was on a metric that's fairly similar to a credit score. It goes from 0 to 800. And this was tracked over time on a quarterly basis. And we were able to look at what happened to the employee experience across the organization once the learning modules and this kind of personalized, assessment-driven learning experience was implemented. And what we find is there's a clear change, that if we look at the red line, that's the point at which the learning was implemented in the organization. We see that the line bends and increases, so the employee experience goes up quite a bit, and it's sustained over time. And this is really a key piece to this, is that there's a lot of managerial development and learning that has a very short lifespan. I'm sure all of you have had experiences where your manager goes to training over the weekend or at the end of the week. They come back on Monday, and it's as if they're a new person. They're doing new things, they're interacting with new ways, but then the reality starts to settle back in, and by Tuesday, it's as if 50% of the learning is lost. By Wednesday, another 50% of that. And by the end of the week, they're back to normal in terms of whatever they were doing. And so the learning was essentially lost. But here what we're seeing is that we have a sustained change, and that change is sustained over at least 1 year. So clearly this is a very effective learning in terms of improving the experience, but keeping it going over time. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague, Tommy Lee, who's going to address any questions that people might have.
Here I am. Thank you, Charles. We have looks like 4 so far. Milanis, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, says, can you talk about some of the behaviors you've seen change, and were there any ones that were more challenging than others?
Yes, there certainly are certain types of behaviors that are much more difficult to change. What we have decided to do is to make everything very behaviorally focused. And one of the challenges you have is that when we focus on these very abstract behaviors like give good feedback, managers have no idea what good feedback means because they may never have received it themselves. And they don't know what it looks like to give good feedback. So we find that when we break down these complicated behaviors into very specific tasks and behaviors, we have a lot more success. So for example, instead of saying, give great feedback, we can start with, give specific feedback. Tell the individual specifically what she or he did, what was the impact of those behaviors, and why you would like them to repeat that in the future. We find that when we get to that level of specificity, it's much easier for individuals to understand the behaviors they are supposed to do and then be able to execute them.
Excellent. That was a great question. Vlad says, what would be your top 3 talking points when I talk to my CEO for her to understand the importance of recognition?
Okay. Say
Top
it is
3.
top 3. It is human nature. Human beings want to be appreciated. That is a basic, fundamental need. It is one that human beings generally are not good at. Number 3, when we're good at it, we can drive business results. And I'm going to sneak a quick 4th one in there.
Okay.
It can be developed. We can help people get better at this.
Tara says, what comes after the prescribed learning is done? Is there more learning to do, or is it just over?
Oh, it's a really great question. So in our system, we have currently these micro learning modules, really around 20 very specific behaviors. And we have a kind of well thought through learning process where managers really wouldn't complete more than 1 module roughly every 5 weeks, because we want them to learn, to integrate, consolidate, and apply. So, for most of our clients, it's 2 to 3 years before they finish. And actually, we're in the process right now of rolling out a whole new suite of modules with some partners of ours in which really focus more on the engagement side of the equation, a little bit less on the recognition side. So there's always constant opportunities to learn and to grow and to do more and more.
Well, that's it. If you guys have more questions, even after the webinar or even after the rebroadcast, you'll be able to see Charles's webinars at Rito.com within the next couple of days. Go ahead and ask them. We're going to put up our Charles's contact information. Oh, you did. There it is. Yep. You can reach out to Charles. Again, I'm Tommy Lee, and I'm at TommyLee@Rito.com. And Charles, thanks again for just another enlightening session. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone for being with us today. And please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. Have a great day.
Great. You too. Take care.